Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode. We are being joined by the lovely, incredible, talented Tiffany Napper. Tiffany's a former music industry powerhouse. She's so impressive. She orchestrated campaigns for Elton John, Alicia Keys, Disney. I can't even, but she's been an entrepreneur since 2011, stepped out on her own, launched her own PR and branding agency. I literally am like fangirling. I feel like we met as organically as the internet allows, and learning about your resume after we met is just like, I'm like, okay, we're friends. Over the last 14 years, she's funded multi-six-figure ventures, which is insane, from an award-winning agency to a stadium-approved handbag line to a co-working space for creatives, which that's the dream. But it didn't come without a price. And we're going to talk all about this today. We're talking about burnout. And she realized in 2016 that running 3 businesses at once with too little self-care was unsustainable. So when she hit that burnout rock bottom, closed up shop on 2 businesses, enrolled in yoga teacher training, which again is like somehow the entrepreneurial dream for everybody too. Her own Eat, Pray, Love journey led her to the roles that she embraces today. She's a keynote speaker and business consultant for fellow high achievers. I'm like, sign me up over here. Tiffany wears her new crowns with great pride, helping leaders build thriving, resilient businesses without burnout. We're going to be talking all about resiliency and burnout here. And I am so excited and thrilled and just honored that you're here, Tiffany. Can you tell our people, I mean, I feel like your bio gives such a good insight to you, but why is burnout? I feel like I have burnt out several times. I've spoken on it, but to really hone in on that resiliency piece of it, what makes that so important to you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to, again, know you and get to know you even better and be on your podcast. So thank you for having me. And the burnout journey for me is so personal. So what I didn't tell you in the bio is prior to all of that, I learned from experience that as high achievers, we have a tendency to throw ourselves into whatever is in front of us, right? So twice, not once, but twice, when I was in the corporate world, I would leave a job just utterly burnt out, exhausted, feeling undervalued, and then they would replace me with 3 people. That happened. That's not hypothetical. That happened to me twice. And so, of course, the second time you look back and go, oh, that's on me, right? That's not on them. That's on me. I clearly didn't fully understand my value. I didn't understand boundaries. And I learned that the hard way. And so I walked away from 2 beautiful jobs. I loved both of those jobs. I just had gotten to my own end of the rope, so to speak. So the burnout journey for me is so, so, so important. And so this message is so important because I stand in the truth of what happens when you make sure that you don't burn out. And sure, I had success in the past when I was running myself ragged, but what is success? Right? I had to rebuild the definition of success for myself. And now the life I live is true success. And that's what I'm out there on a mission to help everyone redefine the word success and find that success without sacrificing yourself.
Gosh, this is such an important conversation, and I'm literally chills because I feel like we all need it. Even those of us who have been, in the grind for a long time, we still need this reminder. So I'd love to hear, going off of what you said, I'd love to hear your perspective of what success was for you versus what success looks like for you now.
Sure. Yeah, I think in the past success was just accolades, right? Did I meet the mark? Did I exceed the goal? Did I hit the revenue marker? Did I win the award? Those were my success metrics.
Yeah.
And so now that is not at all what I care about. Sure,
Yeah.
I want to run a very highly profitable business, but most importantly, I want to make a good impact and I want to be happy. And everybody's definition of happy is different, right? But and I really prefer the word filled with joy. I like joy better than happy, just because it just lands a little differently in my body when I say it. So I always say I'm trying to get out there and build a successful business that brings you joy or brings me joy. And so for me, that looks like, and everybody's different. For me, that looks like a lot of flexibility and freedom in my schedule. That looks like having those wins for my clients and for myself and being able to be like, oh, look, we did that. And I didn't give up my gratitude practice in the morning. I didn't give up my yoga practice, which is something that was the first thing that went off my to-do list when I was overworking. I still woke up every day and meditated. I still went to yoga. I still nourished my body. I still stopped for lunch. I still was able to quit work at 4 o'clock and go meet up with my friends. Like all of the things that I used to sacrifice are no longer being sacrificed. And I have money in the bank. Okay, now that's my definition of success.
Gosh, that is amazing. I feel like so often I hear from my students and my clients, and even I've had these thoughts myself of there's no way to have both of those things. Like, how do you have that profit if you're not hustling, if you're not putting in that extra work, all the extra hours, sacrificing all of the self-care? And
Mhm.
for me, I feel like the past couple of years for me have been like that reckoning of treating myself with the same level of importance as I treat my business.
Mhm.
But I would I would love to pose that question to you of like, what would you say to somebody who said, there's no way, if I'm not working, I'm not making money.
Mhm.
So, and I have to make money. Somebody has to pay the bills.
Sure. And I understand that. And to be clear, if you're listening, I am a single woman who has been solely responsible for paying all of my own bills since the day I graduated college, right? So I have not had anyone saving me either. And I have those same concerns and worries that used to kind of hang over my head as well. But if you don't believe me, I would say try it. So you may have heard the phrase to pay yourself first in business, like when you're talking about allotting your business and paying taxes and bills and all this stuff, you'll hear people say, pay yourself first, right? Which basically just means like whatever money the business makes, make sure that you're putting a little bit of money into your personal bank account first and foremost before you pay your bills, your contractors, your taxes, etc. I would say you can use that same analogy about self-care and time management. So take care of yourself first, then do the business. And even if you just start with, I'm going to carve out 30 minutes every morning that I take care of myself, whatever that looks like for you. It could just mean quiet time. It could mean reading. It could be meditating. It could be journaling. It could be walking. It could be anything. But just take 30 minutes in the beginning of the day to say, I come first, then jump into work. Do that for like, I don't know, 14 days. Come back, tell me you didn't see an improvement in your life and your business, because your attitude, your ability to be this like radiant, shiny, magnetic thing will change when you put yourself first. So it can sound scary, but I'm not saying like go take off for a month. I'm just saying 30 minutes a day. You can do it, I promise.
I'm really glad that you said I'm not saying take off for a month, because I feel like so often that's people like an outsider's perspective. For example, in the seasons, even now, when
Mhm.
I get overwhelmed or I feel like I'm being overworked or I feel like just exhausted, that like you feel it in your bones, like I am
Oh yeah.
tired. I was
Mhm.
just saying before we hit record, like after the holidays, after, crazy busy seasons, I'm just like, I can't do it. My
Mhm.
husband to this day will repeatedly say to me, like, just take the month off. So like, I guess I would love to hear,
Mhm.
I think people need to hear that encouragement, but like, I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Like, why won't that work?
I mean, I just don't think it's realistic for most of us to take the
Yeah.
month off. One of the things I do quite frequently with a lot of my clients who come to me, and not all of my clients come to me feeling already burnt out, but let's be honest, as I mentioned already, there's a lot of stats and data out there, studies that show high achievers are more likely to succumb to burnout, right? So it's not rocket science. So a lot of times they come to me and we're skirting that edge. We're like, oh, I feel it coming and we've got to pull back. So the first thing I'll say is we call it a CEO Friday around here. And it's not always a full to Friday. Sometimes it's a half Friday. Sometimes it's 3 hours, 2 hours, afternoon, morning, whatever. But it's typically a Friday because Fridays are just easy days of the week to kind of skirt out a little bit. And I say, okay, first thing we're going to do is for the next 30 days, you're taking CEO Fridays. And that means on Fridays, or that little allotment of time on Fridays, you're doing what you need to fill your cup. That could be going to get a massage, going to get a pedicure, again, going for a walk, taking yourself to the movies, taking yourself out for lunch. It could be completely zoning out and watching Netflix on your couch. It could be going on a little like mini day retreat for yourself where you just let all of your thoughts and ideas pour onto paper. But that CEO day is your day to fill your cup. And what inevitably happens is they'll come back years later and they're still taking their CEO Friday because they realize, oh, wait, the way I was doing it wasn't the only way to do it. And this is way more fulfilling and more fruitful because when we give ourselves time, when we give our brain time to let our ideas bubble to the surface, we come back to work with more clarity. We make smarter decisions. We're better leaders for our team. Like there's just all this good stuff that bubbles up when you actually put yourself first.
I love that. And I also think it's worth thinking about the fact that what you just described sounds like it's something that will have such a more lasting effect than taking a holiday, like a big break or a big holiday or sabbatical or whatever. It's like you're creating new systems that can continue with the longevity of your business. So that's an amazing tip. And I also like that you call it a CEO day because I feel like when I hear, educators talk about CEO days, it's always like work. It's
Right.
always like more work. And it's
Right.
like, okay, CEO day is like finance days or CEO day
Mhm.
is like whatever. And it's like, no, CEO day can be about the CEO.
Mhm. Yeah, it's intentionally worded that way because we have a tendency, and again, I've been there, done that, to think if I'm not working, quote unquote working, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so when we call it a CEO Friday, and I say you get to do whatever you want on that Friday, I have one client who she's like, I just want to be with my kid. Great, go pick up your kid from school and spend the afternoon with your kid. That's your CEO Friday. I don't care what you do, but you will, without a doubt, show up better to work on Monday when you give yourself that time. So sometimes it might be sitting in front of a spreadsheet. Sometimes it might be getting a massage. I mean, I don't know about you, but like when I do give myself like those true like luxury self-care moments, which I don't do that frequently, but when I do it, I always get off a massage table or come back from a pedicure and I'm like, I had an epiphany, right? Like
Yes.
because we
Yes.
gave ourselves time to think. So it's intentionally called a CEO Friday because, again, as high achievers, we can be kind of rigid about the terminology that we use. And I want us to break free from that. And I want us to understand that, like, our life is about so much more than that title and what we have been told it requires to be a CEO and to be a smart business owner.
Yeah, I love that. I really do actually, now that you mention it, every time I take a real break and like fully relax, that's when the best ideas come for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like I will say when I'm on the massage table, I'm like, I wish I had my like a notebook, like a
Notepad.
notebook, like my face in the cradle.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but yeah, no, I love that. I think that's so important. I'd love to hear from your perspective. Kind of, I like to think about getting ahead of burnout too, and I know that
Mhm.
I do want to touch on once you've burnt out, like the resiliency factor. But if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I don't know, am I burnt out or am I just like regular people stressed? Am I regular tired? Like, how do you differentiate?
Ooh, that's such a good question. And I do believe that there's a lot of misconceptions out there around burnout and about like the difference between what causes burnout. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but like there are people that say that if you're doing what you love, you'll never burn out. I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, no.
I 1000% disagree with that. I think when you're doing what you love is when you are more susceptible to burnout because you are so dedicated to the project. So I've seen that go around on Instagram, and I'm just gonna call that a red flag right now. Like do not buy into that because then you're doing yourself a disservice by telling yourself that maybe what you're doing isn't what you love, and that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
But burnout for me is when you truly don't feel like yourself anymore. So we know when we're just tired versus when we're like, oh, I am depleted.
Yeah.
Right. There's a difference there. We know when something that used to bring you joy no longer brings you joy. That's when we're probably, tiptoeing into that burnout phase. So I'll use myself as an example. I have a podcast that I shared very openly about this. I was hosting retreats. I hosted a retreat in March maybe of 2024 in this beautiful location, Sayulita, Mexico. Had been there before, went back with this amazing group of women and came home from it. And I thought, oops, here we are. This is the brink of burnout, because I love hosting retreats, but I came back from that retreat feeling like I don't think I ever want to host a retreat again. So those little clues for me are like, okay, we're not just tired, we need to take a beat. And it's actually what prompted me to step into what I called last year my soft CEO era, where I really pulled back. I canceled 2 major launches last year because I noticed, because I know the signs, right? So for me, I think, just if something that used to bring your joy, you now look at with like a lot of dread, that's probably a sign that we're not just tired. Maybe we're venturing into burnout. And the smartest thing to do in that moment is to look at your schedule, look at what's going on around you, look at what you've put on your own plate, let's be honest, and say what can go for a moment. Because the only way to recover from burnout is to be able to give yourself time and space to just be. And that's really hard, especially because oftentimes when we're coming into burnout cycle, we've come from a go, 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 go moment. Like I was coming off a retreat where I was like, I'd come from a launch straight into a retreat and I was like, da 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 da. And then I was like, oh, I have to be still. This is incredibly hard right now. So that's okay. It's okay if it feels hard. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It probably means you're doing exactly what your body needs. But the best thing you need to do in those moments is like pour into yourself. If you're into working out, walking, yoga, Pilates, anything like that, get yourself back in class. If you don't meditate, try it. And again, like sometimes it looks like just putting yourself on a massage table because we know we can't have our phones for an hour, right? Just like putting yourself in a situation where you literally have to disconnect for a minute and just be.
Wow, there were so many amazing takeaways from just that one, like just that one breakdown of being able to recognize the difference, but also some really great, like tactical. I hope people will go back and listen to that again. Like you guys hit back. I was gonna say hit rewind. Like I'm 87. It's fine, but you know what I mean. I feel like everyone who listens to this knows what rewind means.
Yes.
But yeah, I just feel like giving people those tangible steps too, and understanding, because it is really hard to take things away
Mm-hmm.
from like your list or from the offers that you have. And I do think that there's a pressure around feeling like if you have to table something that you
Mm-hmm.
can't ever have it back.
Right. Oh, and that's not true. We know that's not true, So I always just think like, is it true? Is it really true? If you find yourself, you go back to Byron Kate, right? Like, is it true? Is it really true? If you're not familiar with her, Google her, the questions that she has you ask when you find yourself in those moments where it feels difficult. But yeah, I mean, again, very transparently, I haven't shared this publicly with anyone really, but so last year I canceled 2 major launches. One was in my mastermind and one was my sales program. Both of those are very chunky revenue drivers for my business. And I canceled both of them. And we, just finalized, it's January right now. So we just finalized my P&Ls and everything for my taxes. My profit margin was 17% higher last year, even though my revenue was down,
Wow.
because I was intentional with my time and my energies and my efforts. So keep that in mind as well. Like top line revenue numbers are great. They mean nothing if we don't have healthy profit margins. So when we say I'm going to cancel something, take something off my plate, we can initially go, "Oh no, that means I'm not going to do as well this year." And that's actually also bogus. That means
Mhm.
nothing. Because again, you get to decide what you do with this newfound time that you're freeing up for yourself.
That is such a good point that I think it's one of those things you think about when you have the numbers in front of you, but
Mhm.
when you're in the moment and in the emotion of having to differentiate between this offer and like which one is, I mean, I think about this myself with my conference. Obviously, my conference is one of our biggest in terms of like the top line, like we're
Mhm.
bringing in a ton of money, but it is the most expensive thing I've ever done in my life.
Right.
Like the profit margin is not like where that would have to be the first thing to go. And I think about myself, and if I were in a season of burnout, it would have to be the first thing to go, and it would be the last thing that I'd want to let go of.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, what to go back to what you just said, just because we pause on it for a year doesn't mean it can't come back. Like, sure, I'm not doing a retreat this year, based on how I felt last year. But that does not mean I won't be doing more retreats in the future. Mark my word, I love hosting retreats, and the stories and the success stories that come from the women who have attended my retreats. Are you kidding me? I would be doing a disservice if I didn't host another retreat. I know that to be true. But I
Yeah.
also know it's okay for me to take a year off. I know that, all I'm going to do is create more, excitement when I do come back out and announce that retreat spots are open. So, I think it's just about really getting honest with yourself, and this is where like a great journal practice comes into play, where you can journal these thoughts out and make sense of what's true versus how you're feeling in the moment.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm so bad at journaling. But I'm working on it. No, I love that. And I think that that is so encouraging for people to hear that you took, you're like, I didn't offer the retreat. I didn't offer Next Level for 2 years before I brought it back this past year. And it did sometimes, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I felt like, will I ever be able to do it again? But I did, and I love it. So I love that. I feel like it is so encouraging to hear somebody at your level and your success to say that, like, you're still reevaluating these things on an annual basis.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about resiliency, because I feel like you have so much to offer there. And I would love to hear like your insight on what does resiliency look like in the
Mhm.
face of somebody who maybe, whether they have or have not had to like face burnout. We
Mhm.
all need to have that resiliency in our businesses. So what does that look like for you as an educator?
Yeah, resiliency is such a powerful, powerful thing. And as someone who has been through so much in life, not just burnout related, but just life traumas, right? I've really had to strengthen my resiliency muscles through just having to, right? Didn't really have an option. It wasn't like, oh, I can just go curl up in a ball for the next 30 days. As I mentioned earlier, like I've always been a self-sustained individual, have to pay the bills, have to pay the mortgage, right? So resiliency is just about strengthening that muscle that allows you to not just bounce back. I think that's where most people go. They think, oh, I'm going to bounce back. I'm like, no, no, no. Resiliency is about how you become so strong in the face of whatever the world throws your way that you never lose your joy.
Mm.
That's what it is for me. So it might mean we have moments where we are having to just sit in the pain, sit in the discomfort, allow ourselves to feel the feelings of burnout, exhaustion, sadness, whatever. It usually also, for me, the next phase is okay, what's the healing journey going to look like so that I can become more resilient? Do I know how to best heal myself? What does my body need? What do I need? And then it's about allowing ourselves to start to grow and strive again. Right. So it's not about just like bouncing back and, oh, I'm right back up on the horse and I'm going to go tackle that next goal. It's like, no, to be truly resilient is, even in the face of burnout, is allowing yourself to sit with it, working on the healing journey until you get back to the point where you're striving again. And that wave that I'm kind of describing right now is what I think is the key to a fulfilling, balanced, joy-filled, successful life. I don't think we ride this like straight plane of balance. I think to truly have a balanced life, we have to know that it's going to be this wave. And as long as I can surf the wave and stay on my board, I'm doing it. I'm balanced, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of what resiliency looks like for me.
I feel like that's such a unique take on such a commonly used word
Mhm.
that I mean, I just found myself wanting to listen to it again. I feel like one thing that really stood out to me there is when you said sitting in your feelings and allowing yourself to feel, like that's something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, educators, high achievers, like you've mentioned, really struggle with. Like,
Mhm.
how do you guide people into that?
Yeah. For me, it is truly just sometimes we just need to hear that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling right now.
Mm,
I think there's been this narrative that, and especially in the hustle culture, which we're kind of coming out of this like years and decades of kind of being told hustle, hustle, harder, harder. There's been this narrative that you're not allowed to be down. You're not allowed to have a bad day. You're not allowed to have an off day. Like we said, you're not allowed to take a day off, right? And so feeling your feelings, just being given permission to feel your feelings the moment that I finally realized it was okay for me to feel my feelings, um, and I'll give an example, but that is when everything really started to click into place for me. And I started to realize just how resilient I truly was. Because as I alluded to, so I've been through two different hurricanes where I lost my house, lost all my things, lost my car, lost my apartment. I've been through in a span of 2 years, I lost a grandfather, a grandmother, and my dad. And then not even a year later, I lost my 17-year-old dog, which was like my baby. I've been knocked down plenty of times in life, just like anybody else who's ever been through any hardships, right? But it was a couple of years ago when I lost my dad, and I'm a lot farther on my self-care journey than I've, had been in the previous situations. And I remember riding the waves of the emotions. So even if it was uncomfortable, even if it was embarrassing, even if I was in a public place, if something triggered me and I felt sad and the tears came, I let them flow. And what I would notice is it didn't last very long. It wasn't this like epic day long cry sesh. When I let the tears flow as they arose, it would be like 5 minutes in my car. And then I would be like, oh, wow, I feel so much better. Okay. And I would go back on into my day. And I think that's when I realized this is resiliency. Like this is riding the wave of the emotions, not letting it take me out or down, but letting it come over me, wash over me, allowing myself to honor what I'm actually going through right now, not putting a band-aid on it, not pretending, but also being able to get my tissue out, put some lip gloss on, and go back into my day. That is when I really was like, oh, I feel so resilient right now. And people around me were like, how on earth are you doing what you're doing? And I'm like, honestly, I'm just allowing myself to feel the feelings, but I'm not allowing it to take me down because I have other things going on in life right now. And I want to still experience those things and I want to show up for those things. So that was a long-winded answer, but I think it's just permission to feel your feelings.
No, that was not long wit. I feel like I feel like it was so helpful to hear your story. Thank you for sharing your story and also for allowing people to use that as an example of, like you said, we've all gone through life. And I think hearing that is such an encouragement that there is a way to work through and to build that resiliency almost as a practice. And
Mhm.
I also love that you shared that you were further along in your self-care journey during one time of grief and of a
Mhm.
hardship than you were previously and how it made such a difference,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So if somebody is like, okay, this sounds like something I need to be more cognizant of, what are a couple of steps that they can take to start building that practice of being conscientious about their resiliency?
Whew, I would say first and foremost, maybe identify one way that you can allow yourself to feel the feelings in the moment, and one way that you can start to heal whatever you're going through. So those might be two different things. Tangible examples would be like allowing would be what I just said, like just allow yourself to cry if the tears are coming. Don't like force yourself to hold it in.
Yeah.
And then immediately identify what can I do to heal, whatever it is I'm going through right now. So that's going to be different for if it's grief or a health scare or burnout or what have you. But just identify one thing that could help me heal on this journey and start there. Like, I'm not going to tell you to make like a 10-page list. I'm going to say just identify two things that you can incorporate into your day. Some of those things won't even take extra time. You can habit stack them, which just means like put it on top of something you're already doing. Already making coffee every day? Let yourself cry while you make the coffee, right? Like it can be that simple. But yeah, I will reiterate one more time because I think it's really healthy and important for you to hear. I'm a lot farther along in my burnout prevention journey than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So the
Yeah.
way that I bounce back is a lot differently. And that only comes with time. That comes
Mhm.
with using the muscle, strengthening the muscle. So the example of last year and the retreat and how I recovered from that is very different from 2017 when I had to close two of my three businesses and I enrolled in yoga teacher training and I ran off to Bali. Like that was what I needed during that burnout prevention cycle.
Yeah.
Now it's a lot less, extreme. So if you need something a little bit more extreme because you're newer in your journey of resiliency and burnout prevention, that's okay too. Don't let my story become your story, but I do hope you can see how simple it can be to start.
Oh, that's so encouraging and I just can't even tell. I feel like I feel really encouraged to even think for myself, like, how can I carve that time out? I love that you ran away. You're like, I ran away to Bali. So cool. But I get it. Relatable. Amazing. I would love to hear, well, and you have a resource around resiliency too, as well, don't you, that we
I
can
do.
share with our people?
Yeah, I do. I have a new free resource. It pops up as soon as you get to my website, and it's just 10 steps to become a more resilient you, because you're already really resilient. You're here, you're listening to this podcast, you're doing great things, but I think we can always just continue to strengthen that muscle.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll make sure that we link it all in the show notes as well. But you guys go grab that because I mean, I know I will as soon as we're done recording. I'm just going to do it right now. I love that. I think that it's just so valuable. And I can't wait to see, the impact that not just this episode, but people being exposed to hearing more of this and understanding that this type of work is so pivotal to the success and to the like building a business that lasts,
Yes.
because it just won't last without it, right?
It doesn't last without it. And you can hustle and grind your way to certain figures. Trust me, been there, done that, built 5 multi 6-figure businesses hustling my butt off, but
Mhm.
none of it was sustainable. And it wasn't until I brought in outside resources. I've hired my first business consultant, and I had other people in my ear being like, "Hey, Tiff, like you're doing great, but you could be doing better if got help here or pulled back here or whatnot." So it's just not long-term sustainable. And like I said, so many of my clients come to me because they're either fearful of losing their health, their wellness, their relationship, something, or they've already experienced that and they want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And so some things you're going to have to learn on your own. That's part of life, but also if you're at all worried and concerned and you want to build a really sustainable business, please put yourself first. Like, do not
Yeah.
underestimate that the business does not run without you. Like, you are the center of your business. So make it clear.
I could not agree more. And I feel like I'm so glad that you're saying, I feel like a broken record when I say that on this show because the listeners here have been like, we get it. You are your business. But I mean, you really are. And I have seen the growth in my own business in the times where I prioritize myself, and I cannot stress like how much I agree with this. It's insane. I would love to hear before we talk about the unpopular opinion, because I was going to wrap, but I want to hear, because I feel like you're going to have a take that I really want. I really want our listeners to hear on this. I have hustled my way into a high earning business, a
Mhm.
high earning year, right? And I've stepped back and I've made less, and I've stepped back and I've made more. What do you say to the people who feel or who say to you, well, I want to make $500,000. I want to make $1 million. I want to make 7 figures.
Mhm.
There's no way I can do that and still have a healthy,
Mm.
healthy burnout free life because I am my business. And like, is that possible? Or
Mhm.
do I just have to be okay with understanding that success means less money?
Ooh, wee. I love this because obviously I feel like such a body-led reaction that this is just not true. And it's just not true. If you're telling yourself that, you're lying to yourself. And the first step what I would say is stop lying to yourself. And
Mhm.
maybe it's just all you've known. It doesn't mean it's the truth, right?
Yeah.
So this is why it does become, we're not this conversation is not about high-level strategy, but this is where your strategy comes into play. This is where your numbers come into play. This is where you have to have a really solid understanding of the forecast, the projections of your business. What are you charging? Could you charge more? Do you have enough help on your team? How many more team members do you need to get to that number? And then what's your profit margin still going to be even when you add more team members to your team? Because people think, oh, if I add team members, I'm going to make less money. That's also not necessarily true at all. Not if you're doing it right. So it's just untrue. And it might be that where you are now with the business structure and model that you have now, you can't just like 10x that and that not get you to burnout. We might have to make some adjustments along the way. But please know that you can make adjustments and build a very, very profitable, sustainable, successful business that does not rob you of your joy, does not mean you have to put yourself on the back burner. That's a lie.
Thank you for sharing that. I was like, I can't wait to hear your response to this. It's something we all need. I need it. We all need it. So thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. Exactly what I thought you would say. And love when that happens. I would love to hear as we wrap up, because you've shared so much amazing insight. I'd love to hear your unpopular opinion on the topic. Now, it can be about burnout, it can be about resiliency, it can be about any of the things we talked about.
My unpopular opinion. My unpopular opinion might be this. I haven't thought this through, but I'm going to go with it. It's the first thing that came to mind. My unpopular opinion might be that you're going to have to experience burnout to some degree to understand how to prevent it.
Mm.
And it's not that necessarily that it's unpopular. It just might not be what you want to hear. But I've used the reference before that it's kind of like a child who doesn't understand that the stove is hot until they've touched the hot stove.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of similar. Like we were talking earlier about how do you know if it's burnout or just tired? You're going to know.
Yeah. When you know, you know. Yeah.
When you know, you know. And so that might be my unpopular take is like, there's nothing in the world that's going to necessarily keep you from ever experiencing burnout. But just know that just because you experience it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. In fact, it means you're literally just doing what the world's been telling you to do. And so now you give yourself permission to do things differently.
I love that so much. This has been such a great episode. I feel like I needed to hear everything that you said. I feel like I just got, 30 minutes of like just pure coaching and love and encouragement poured into me. So I know our listeners will feel that way as well. If you guys are new to Tiffany, like go follow everything she does. She's such a fun person to follow as well. And thank you for sharing all of your insights. What's the best way for people to like keep in touch with you?
Yeah, come find me on Instagram. I'm the most active on Instagram and I'm just at Tiffany Napper. And let's be friends.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tiffany. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
For show notes and resources mentioned on today's episode, head to sohere'sthethingpodcast.com. This episode is brought to you by the Educators Lounge, where rising educators become industry leaders. Come join us if you're looking for community, resources, and opportunities that will take your educational offerings to the next level. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.